Hello guys, welcome back. Welcome back guys. Hello, my name is Martin Jones and this is P2. This is the second half of session 3 as it goes, and over my shoulder is what we have already studied as regards foreign currency translation. There are two forms of foreign currency translation. The fancy name for this is translation at the entity level, translation at the group level. It's a bit of a mouthful, that, isn't it? But what it means is the taking of foreign transactions and turning them into dollars, and the taking of foreign subsidiaries and turning them into dollars. And the reason I've zipped off to this particular slide here is there is a completely crazy part of financial reporting that I haven't talked about in the context of foreign currency. I've touched on it, but I haven't talked about it. The performance report is properly called the SPLOCI, the Statement of Profit or Loss and Other Comprehensive Income. And like its name, it is exactly what it sounds like. It's a mixed bag of fruit just chucked together randomly. In this case, there are two halves. There's the P&L at the top and the OCI at the bottom. So you've got P&L and OCI. Now they are in fact two separate statements, but those two separate statements are preferentially presented on the same page together to give this thing called the SPLOCI. It is actually rare in real life that anyone actually does this. And I don't blame them really, because financial reporting is in such a mess in this area that I can understand a CFO wishing to communicate with his shareholders, trying to make this horrible mess look as non-messy as you possibly can. So it's very common actually for page 1 of the FS to be the P&L and page 2 to be the OCI and have the SPLOCI over 2 pages. But that's not the way that the examiner sees this. That's not the way that the P2 examiner sees this. He prefers to see it the way that really ideally it should be presented, which is basically the top half of the first page is your P&L and the bottom half of your first page is the OCI, and the combined statement is called the SPLOCI, or more eloquently the performance statement. The idea being you go performance on page 1, position on page 2 and cash flow on page 3. So it goes cash flow statement, position, performance, with performance being, for most investors, performance being the most important thing. So that's on page 1 of your FS. So that's the way the examiner sees this. Now, as we're going to study together on Thursday, we're going to find that this thing called the OCI is a right mess. There's no logic at all to this other comprehensive income statement thing. But there is a body of rules that tells us what goes through the OCI, and there are 5 things that go through the OCI, and I will tell you what those 5 things are when we study the OCI more formally later on in the course. But of course, we're already doing Forex. You can't really avoid it. As if everything uses everything. P2 is a bit like that. It just sort of doesn't have a beginning, doesn't have an end. It's all a bit of a squodge. So what I'll do is I'll tell you as little as I can, but I'll still have to tell you a little about this thing called the OCI. The law says that foreign transaction gains and losses go to, or through is an even better word, go through the P&L, and foreign subsidiary gains and losses go through the OCI. It makes absolutely no sense whatsoever. It is the law. To help us a little bit, it isn't really foreign transactions that are going through the P&L, because foreign transactions they're said to occur. They have an occurrence. It's actually the payables related to the transactions. So what it really means is foreign payables. Foreign payables go through the P&L. Now that's really handy, because even though this subject is completely bonkers, at least we have P and P, which is very, very useful. I find that enormously useful. So gains and losses on payables go through the P&L. Gains and losses on subsidiaries go through the OCI, and you just have to learn that. So did we see any of that before the break? Let's go and have a look at what we did communicate before the break. Let's go and have a look at this fella here over my shoulder. This, as you can see, is subsidiary 4x, and subsidiary 4x goes through the OCI. So we got that right. And ends up being accumulated in the OCE. So we got that right. Should we do that again? So subsidiary 4x, where does it go? It goes through the OCI and ends up being accumulated in the ACCA. Great. What else did we do before the break? Well, we also did a payable. Of course, that was a payable, wasn't it? That was a payable being measured at delivery, remeasured at settlement, original measurement, what we actually paid, a gain. And what did we do with this gain? We put this gain through the P&L report, and therefore it would have been accumulated in retained earnings. Which brings me to the homework question. The homework question is, extreme. And the reason extreme is called extreme is it is at the extreme. It's only been examined once since 2007, when the P2 examination was originally developed. Once in the last 10 years, that's not very often at all, is it? But it is at the extreme, and it kind of hints at its extremity down here by having two different currencies. We've got the kram and we've got the dinar. So what is the extreme? Well, actually, a foreign subsidiary is quite common, and a foreign payable is also quite common as well. But what is very, 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 very unusual is this, which is both. If you have a foreign payable and you have a foreign subsidiary, then you end up with gains in the P&L and in the OCI, and therefore gains in the retained earnings and the OCE in reserves. Because that's the law. Yeah, that's the law. And this question deals with that. So you can see, if you trundle up the question, that the subsidiary is in krams. And that means, therefore, that the payable is in dinars. So, when I say gain, I mean gain generically. A positive gain is a gain, a negative gain is a loss. So I mean gain, positive and negative. So we're going to have two gains, one on the payable up in the P&L and one on the subsidiary down in the OCI. So one up here and one down there and one up here. And this question is called extreme because it is at the extreme. It has both. That's your homework. Although, of course, your main homework is to redo what we've done together. Especially the stuff that we did last week, which you may not already have caught up with. And if you are catching up with last week, then last week is really, really important. Make sure you do that first. And of all the homework questions I've given you so far, which is Hebrides, Ronet and Extreme in chapters 1, 2 and 3, Hebrides, Ronet and Extreme in chapters 1, 2 and 3, actually it's Ronet that is the top question. Ronet. If you haven't done Ronet, do that one. That one is the top question. Good. I'm finished now. Any questions, guys? Any questions about Forex? I've actually finished Forex. That's all I want to say about Forex. How are you with your Forex? What have I done with my drink? I left it outside. I really need it. Oh, there it is. No questions on Forex? Maybe I should just check you are actually there. It's cool. Oh yeah, you are there. Good. Okay. I was going to do a test just to make sure you were actually still there. Good. It's cool for me too. I'm cool. I'm cool because the air conditioning is on full power. Fantastic. Now, you can tell that I'm coming to a hiatus in this 2-hour session that we have together. I'm coming to a breathing point in this 2 hours that we have together. And I'm cheating a little bit because I know what's coming up next time we're together. We're doing cash flow statements and current issues. And that's actually quite a lot to do in one session. Not too much to do in one session, but quite a lot to do in one session. And what I want to do is get ahead of the game. If I go back, just take you back. Can you see foreign currency? We've got that in the bag now. There's the homework question, extreme. We've got that in the bag. What I want to do is get ahead of the game and start to look at cash flow statements straight away. Now, let's just go for it, guys. Let's just go for it. So here's my class notes. And we're going to start brand new, fresh new page on cash flow statements. And it does sound facetious, but I mean it entirely literally. There are just 2 things to learn on cash flow statements. That's how to measure cash flows and where to put them on the statements. There are just 2 things to learn as regards cash flow statements. That's how to measure these cash flows. And once you have the cash flows, you need to learn where to put them on the cash flow statement. And that's it. Now, because that is such a small body of knowledge, you might think that this is an easy process. It most certainly is not. If anyone has tried doing a cash flow statement at work, in the workplace, then you will know that it is a highly politicized, stressful process. My wife is working on the cash flow statement of National Grid at the moment, which is a quoted company quoted on the London Stock Exchange. And she's certainly coming home with a headache each night dealing with this thing, the CFS. There isn't really that much to it, but because it twists and it turns, because it turns and it twists, it is actually quite a painful process to do. But really, the theory, there is just 2 things to learn: how to measure a cash flow and where to put them on the statements. So what we're going to do for the remaining half hour is we're going to learn how to measure cash flows. Now, cash flows are measured using these things called workings. And there's no better way of understanding this process than having a look at some examples. So let me get you started. Maybe I'll just start and then talk about it. Have you seen this kind of information before presented in this way? PPE is a reference to property, plant and equipment. Bit of a mouthful, isn't it? Used to be called tangibles 1,000 years ago. That's a much better name. But PPE is okay. Property, plant and equipment, very visual. PPE, the current figure is what we have this year. And the comparative figure, that is the figure that we had last year. So that's last year's balance, this year's balance, with an increase of 2 in the balance between now and then. And depreciation is 1. And the requirement that is required every time is always the same, which is the cash flow. Do you know what the cash flow is? Can you work it out from that data? Ridwan Humayun, you're under pressure. Greg, you're in the background somewhere. Tell me, can you guess what the cash flow is from that information? You can't. So you're going to benefit from this thing called the cash flow working. But you're also going to benefit from understanding the logic that the cash flow working conveys. Now, the cash flow is 3. But what I'm doing is being a little bit cheeky, just asking you that question without any preamble, because this question over my shoulder is more than just a question. It's an exam style question, and exam style questions come with subtext. They come with culture. They come with rules. Now, the way that the game is played at P2, or indeed at any examination, not in real life, at any examination, is that the examiner tells you everything you need to know about a balance apart from the purchases. So what did happen, definitely, what did happen over my shoulder, you can definitely tell, is we started out with a balance of 8, and then it went down by 1 to 7, and somehow it ended up at 10. That's definitely a fact from the information over my shoulder. So the balance started at 8, went down to 7 because of the depreciation of 1, and somehow jumped up from 7 to 10, and that isn't explained. But you remember what I was saying? The way the game is played is the examiner tells you everything that you need to know apart from the cash flow. Well, the jump from 7 to 10 is unexplained. But if the only thing missing is the cash flow, then the cash flow must be 3. Now that's working out the number in your head, and hopefully now I've explained those numbers to you. You can see that that is quite easy to do with just 3 numbers in your head. But the examiner's not going to give you 3 numbers, and it's not going to be presented in a nice little box like this thing over my shoulder. It's going to be an horrible mess with loads of narrative and drive you mad. So you need a management tool to control the information the examiner is giving to you. And the management tool is called a cash flow working. And the cash flow working works like this. First of all, it has a heading. Then we have the opening balance. And then the closing balance. We used to have 8 and we now have 10. We used to have 8 and we now have 10. Opening positive, closing negative. Always, always, always. Then we have depreciation. Depreciation's 1. And what you do is you ask this very reasonable question: what did this do to that? What did this do to that? Depreciation made PPE go down. So because of the downness of depreciation, you stick a sausage on it and you end up with -3. Oh, okay. So the cash flow, it's actually the cash flow purchases, is 3, but there's 2 pieces of information being conveyed to you. First of all, there is the amount of the cash flow, which is 3, but there's also the direction of the cash flow, which is out. That's given by the sausage, by the way. Good. Let's do it again. So you get the idea, let's do it again. So example 2. PPE, let's stay with PPE so you get the idea. We now have 80, we used to have 71. We have depreciation of 6 and a revaluation gain of 7, an impairment of 1. An impairment of 1. We've got sub acquisition, PPA of 10, and sub disposal, PPA 11, and we also have finance additions, lease additions of 3, and the requirement is the cash flow. Now I'll be a bit more generous with you here. I will reinforce the message from earlier. So the examiner has told you that you have everything that you could possibly need to know about PPE apart from the missing figure. The missing figure is cash flow. Work out the missing figure from the information you have. Going down, depreciation is just depreciation, revaluation gain is just revaluation gain. Impairment is just impairment, but the sub-acquisition and sub-disposal is not just the sub-acquisition and sub-disposal, but that's the PPE walking in and walking out. Now, I don't want to do this literally for the PPE, otherwise that just makes it ridiculously easy, but, you know, doing it for stock makes it pretty clear. When a sub walks in with stock, stock walks in. When a different sub walks out with stock, stock walks out, right? So that's the idea there. So when a sub walks in with stock, stock walks in. When a sub walks out with stock, stock walks out. When a sub walks in with the receivable, receivable walks in. When a sub walks out with the receivable, receivable walks out. So that's that, those two. And then finance additions are just additions to PPE that have been purchased on finance. Over to you, see if you can work out the cash flow. Over to you, see if you can work out the cash flow. I'll work quietly up here on my own. You see if you can work out the cash flow before I get there. I won't be very quick. Okay, I'll start loading in the numbers now. To do that, I'll need to be able to see the numbers, of course, so I'll change the scale. So, I used to have 71. I now have 80. Always, always, always opening positive, closing negative. Always, always. Then I have depreciation of 6. That made PPE go down. then I had a revaluation gain of 7. That made PPE go up. Then I had impairment of 1. That made PPE go down. Then I had a sub-acquisition. When a sub walks in, PPE walks in. That makes PPE walk in and therefore go up. Sub-disposal. When the sub walked out, the PPE in the sub walked out, and that made PPE go down. And when we had finance additions of 3, of course those finance additions made the liabilities go up. But not only did they make the liabilities go up, when the actual machines walked in, they walked in, and the amount of machines in the factory went up. So those are the signs I get. Sorry about having to change the scale there, guys. That was just so I could see my own question. Oh, you're not got an answer yet. Okay, surprise me. So 71 minus 80 minus 6 plus 7 minus 1. What's that? Plus 2. Minus 7? Is that the right figure? Probably better if I do it in my head, knowing me. So that's 0. That's minus 1. That's plus 2. The difference between that is 9. That's plus 2. It's minus 7. It is right. Can you check for me? Oh, yes. Well done, Ridwan. Thank you very much. Nice one. Shorted. There you go. So that thing there is a much more exam style of working. Yeah, the working itself is very much exam style, and that kind of working could score you 3 or 4 marks. Doesn't sound that many, does it? But that's what it is. About probably 4, actually, probably 4. But the reason that these questions are so much harder is because the way that the information is presented. As you can see over my shoulder, the information that I presented to you was very much in the form of a shopping list. All the information was in a shopping list. Now you do get some of this shopping list presentation in real exam questions, but most of it, at least half of it anyway, ends up in these dense paragraphs which are extremely difficult to read. And I'll illustrate that by going off to the relevant question. Or should I say questions, because we're going to do 2. Actually, this question, Squire, has already been recorded for you. And therefore I'm going to set this as well for homework. I imagine that this homework you'll be doing at the weekend rather than tomorrow, Wednesday. But at the weekend, I want you to have a go at Squire. That one's already recorded. So if that one's already recorded, which one are we going to do together next time we're together? We're going to do this one, Ducky. Next time we're together, we're going to do Ducky. And I was talking about how the information is presented. And you can see, you know, there is the PPE, the tangible figures, massive figures, aren't they? 1248, used to have 1248, now have 2473. Where's the rest of it? Where's the depreciation? Well, exactly, that's somewhere in that rubbish there. Somewhere in there is the depreciation. And then there's the revaluation gain. And look how long this question is. And this is a real exam question, but actually this is an exam question from a couple of years back. Questions from 2017, questions for 2016, questions 2015. They're even bigger than this. They're about 50% bigger again. This is a real exam question, but it probably isn't, you know, the modern standard. It's not far off, but it probably isn't quite the modern standard. So the questions are even longer, and they're really, really difficult to read. And it's because they're so difficult to read that this subject is difficult to do. Cash flow statements are not easy. But they are really passable. You can pass these questions if you're good with workings. So let's carry on with another working. We've just done 2 workings, Hang on, we've just done PPE twice. Exactly. So let's do something else. How about we do tax? Tax is really good to do because it's got these two babies here. Current tax and deferred tax. Current tax, we used to have 60. Sorry, we now have 60. We used to have 55. And deferred tax, we used to have 17. Oh, sorry, I've said that wrong way around again. We now have 17. We used to have 12. We used to have 12. We now have 17. Now, we talked a moment ago about the SPLOCI, the Statement of Profit or Loss, and other comprehensive income. The P&L has a tax charge and the OCI has a tax charge. So the P&L tax charge is 57 and the OCI tax charge is 3. What should we do? Should we sell a sub? We'll sell a sub. There we go. And required is cash flow. This one's a particularly good one to do for lots of reasons. One of the reasons it's good to do is because of the doubling up of the balances. We've got 2 balances and therefore we have opening, closing, opening, closing. We've got opening and closing CT and opening and closing DT. Oh, and also there's the doubling up on the SPLOCI, where we've got a P&L charge and an OCI charge. That's nice. And of course, in this case, we've also got one other thing going on as well, which is sub-disposal. That's pretty much standard for exam questions. Generally, what would that be? That would generally be 4 marks. So let me get the information. Let's see if I can do this without going too small. Oh yes, I can get away with that scale. So we used to have 55. We now have 60, opening positive, closing negative. We used to have 12, we now have 17, opening positive, closing negative. The P&L charge was 57. Let's stop there to get the sign for the P&L charge. What is the effect of the P&L charge on the tax liability? Well, the P&L charge makes the tax liability go up. The current year's charge for tax makes us owe more tax, fairly obviously. Now the P&L charge and the OCI charge are essentially exactly the same thing, so they have the same effect. A good way of saying this is that we have a SPLOCI charge of 60. Good way of saying it out loud, even if you don't say that to the examiner. We have a SPLOCI charge of 60, making the liability go up, and then we have a sub-disposal. Where's the figure? 6. When a sub walks out with stock, stock walks out. When a sub walks out with plant, plant walks out. And when a sub walks out with a tax liability walks out and the group owes less, which is cute, isn't it? And this is the cash flow. And then we add down, that's the answer. Oops. I don't know if I'm being a fool picking up my calculator, probably better in my head, but here we go. 44 I get. Just check that with my head. So that's minus 5 minus 10 plus 60, so that's plus 50, 44. Yeah, it would have been quicker in my head, wouldn't it? 44. 40. Wait a sec. Hang on. That's a positive balance. What's going on here? The cash flow is 44, but of course that cash flow is the tax paid. Of course, the taxman doesn't give you this money, and that gives us to a little formula for using the sign, which sounds very technical. Cash flow working. Signs. There are actually two different forms of working. There is a working that is an asset working, and there is a working that is a liability working. And the formula that you apply is really easy, but to be frank with you, it doesn't sound that easily when written down formally, as you'll see in just a second. It sounds a little bit clever, to be honest with you, but when you get into the exam, you'll have no problem with this. Trust me, you will have problems, but not with this. Asset, you trust the sign, and liability, you reverse the sign. So if an asset working looks positive, it is positive, cash is flowing in. You trust the sign. If an asset working gives you a positive cash flow, you trust the sign, and you deal with that positive cash flow as a positive cash flow as a cash inflow. But if you're doing a liability working and it gives you a positive balance, that positive balance you reverse it and use it as a negative cash flow. So if the sign coming out of an asset is positive, you trust it. If the sign coming out of a liability is positive, you reverse it. In fact, whichever sign it doesn't matter, positive or negative, you trust and reverse. So applying that to the fella up there, where is it now? There we go, that one there. That balance there is 7, looks negative. This is a PPE balance, so it is negative. That is PPE purchases. That really is an outflow. But this one down here, oops, sorry, I was a bit quick. Little machine ran off with me. This is clearly a liability. That balance there looks positive, but in fact it's a cash outflow. That is the tax paid. Excuse me, itching my eyebrow there. I don't know why that's a bit itchy. Looks terribly techy, doesn't it? But really, there's nothing to it. Trust me, you are going to make mistakes, but it's not going to be the sign. Honestly, you're not going to make any mistakes with the sign. You'll see why. So let me take you back to the website again. Now, you remember your number one homework is to do this question, Ronette. Let's remind ourselves about Ronette. Where are you, darling? Well, this is live session. Should we just go back and punch Martin in the eyes? There we go. He's looking really evil. He needs a poke in the face. Look at that. He's looking very cocky. Have that. Bajoosh. Right on the schnoz. Right on the nose. Now, the question Ronette, the classic question Ronette, the beautiful question Ronette, the teaching question Ronette, is a complex group question. Beautiful question. And because of that, I've put it into session 2, discussion task. So there's discussion task. Can you see that? Discussion task. I'm going to highlight that. There it is there, discussion task. And as you can see, it's Ronette in brackets. I don't know why it's been bracketed, but there you go, it's been bracketed. There you go. And there's Ronette. But really what's useful about Ronette is there's a couple of questions sorry, a couple of videos with me looking very skinny there, a little bit pale as well, actually. And that was because I was playing lots of sport. I finally got myself fit again. Am I already looking skinnier than last week? I doubt it. But actually, yeah, I've just finally got myself fit after 6 months of injury, so it won't be long before I'll be that skinny again with any luck. So there's me looking skinny, and there are 2 videos here. One is, as you can see, Ronette explanations. I want you to watch the video for Ronette, the explanation video for Ronette, and then have a go yourself. Because Ronette is in the class notes. Just at the back of chapter 2, all the way back to chapter 2. There we go, just saw it there. Oh goodness. Sorry guys, the keyboard almost fell on my lap. There it is on page 23. So just to say that again, I want you to look at the explanations video to get you started. Then do the question Ronette, and then watch me do Ronette. And it's very, very similar with the question Squire. Okay, so question Squire, that's, you know, today's homework. So not surprisingly is in session 3. It's in the discussion task again. There we go, so discussion task. There's, you know, discussion task, session 3, discussion task. There's question Squire. There is Squire. It's not so much the question itself that you want. You want the videos at the bottom. This is Squire format. Basically, that helps you set up the answer to question Squire. And then this is question Squire workings. Is that just outside of my shoulder there, just by my hand there. And what this will do is it'll teach you how to get into the groove of cash flow statements. Now, question Squire is the easier of the 2 questions. As promised, I'm going to do Ducky with you next time I see you. Because I'm doing Ducky with you and holding your hand, I want to do the harder one, the easier one for you. But because you're doing it on your own, I think you'll find Squire quite tricky. You'll find it takes a little bit of getting into. Well, that's okay, you know, practice makes perfect. But what I want you to do with Squire is the same as you do with Ronette. There's 2 videos. So you watch the first video, then you do Squire yourself, then you watch me in the second video. So for both Ronette and Squire, the process is the same. You watch the introductory video, you then do the question yourself, and then you watch the second video just to reinforce your learning. This is question Squire. So I guess I scootle back to chapter 4. I've gone a little bit farther. There it is. That's Ducky. So this is Squire just here. There's question Squire. There it is. You have a go at Squire. Hang on a second, wasn't there a couple of examples up there? Yeah, can you see there's some baby examples. Now these baby examples are really just baby examples, to be honest with you. So if you feel comfortable with what we've just done with example 1, 2 and 3, then you're already ready for the question Squire. If you're comfortable with what we did with example 1, 2 and 3, then you're ready to do an exam question. If you feel that you need a little bit more hand-holding before you get into real exam questions, then you know there are 3 little examples. There's no videos for these examples, of course. There's just answers in the back. But you know, as you can see, they're very, very similar to what you've done so far. All right. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is it. So, are there any questions before I bid you adieu and say I look forward to seeing you on Thursday? Any questions at all? Nope, doesn't seem to be any questions. Alrighty, tidy. I will wish you a pleasant Wednesday, and hope to see you live on Thursday. And if not, you will see me on the recorded version, which I'll be recording on Thursday. So have a successful couple of days, and I'll see you soon. All right, I'm going to go to the, where's that fella gone now? Go to the slide, just to remind you what you're doing next time we're together. There we go. That's what we'll be doing next time we're together. Have a fabulous couple of days. See you soon.